The first thing that they asked us to do here was fill in this table. So with our calculators on our desk, we're going to go ahead and type these things into our calculator and see what they equal. So 2 to the 4th power. What is 2 to the 4th power? Good. Okay. What about 2 to the 3rd power?
8.
Good. What about 2 squared?
4.
4. Good. And what about 2 to the 1st power? Right. Anything raised to the 1st power is just itself. What about 2 to the 0 power? Right. Okay. What about 2 raised to the negative 1?
0.5.
A half. Right. Good. All right. What about 2 raised to the negative 2? A quarter. Very good. What about 2 raised to the negative 3 power?
0.125.
Okay, so math inner for me and tell me what that is as a fraction.
1/8.
Good. All right, and then last one, 2 to the negative 4. What is it?
1/16.
1/16. Very good. Okay, so now that we have the table filled in, let's see if we can make some comparisons about what we're coming up with, okay? So there's nothing like this one here in the middle, right? Anything to the 0 power going to be 1, all right? But what do you notice about the 2 to the 1st and the 2 to the negative 1? What do you guys notice about this answer compared to this answer? Since they had the same exponent, just one of them was positive and one of them was negative. Do they look the same at all? One of them was flipped over into a fraction. Very good. What about the ones that had exponents of 2 and negative 2? So my answers were 4 and 1/4. What about same thing? It was just flipped over into a fraction, right? What about the ones that had exponents of negative 3 and 3? Same thing. It was flipped over into a fraction. And for our 4 and negative 4, same thing, right? All right, so it would appear here that if you have a negative exponent, it's just going to be the reciprocal or the flipped over fraction of what the positive one is, right? Okay, so these were all reciprocals of each other. All right. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's look at our next exponent rule, okay? So this next one says, for every non-zero number b, if you've got a b with a negative exponent, you can just rewrite it as a fraction. And when you put it in the bottom, the exponent's going to become a positive. See, it went from being negative in here to a positive in right here. All right? So, for example, here we have 6 to the negative 4. If I want that to be a positive exponent of 4, then I just put it underneath a 1 in the bottom of a fraction, like this. Okay? At that point, you could go ahead and simplify it, multiply that in your calculator, or raise it to the 4th power. Okay? All right? What about right here? Same thing, right? It's got a negative exponent, so I'm going to put it in the bottom of a fraction. So it's still a negative 4. That part won't change. But the exponent is going to go from being a negative 2 to a positive 2. All right? Okay, on this last one, it's already negative in the bottom. So any guesses on what I should do to make it positive? Not multiply it, move it where? Up, right? So on these, they were negative, so I moved them down. Here it's negative in the bottom, So I'm going to move it up. Okay? So I would put it in the top. You could put it over 1, but that's the same thing. It's just 2 to the third, right? Okay, so it would appear that anytime you've got a negative exponent, wherever it is, just move it the opposite direction. So if it's in the top, you move it down, like we did here. But if it's in the bottom, move it to the top, and it becomes positive. So just move it across the line to change the sign of your exponent. All right? Our second rule is that whatever you have as your base, if you raise it to the 0 power, you're always going to get 1. Okay? So let's look at some examples here. And you can type these in your calculator to double check it. If you put 5 to the 0 power in your calculator, what does it say? Yeah, just says 1. If I put negative 2 to the 0 in my calculator, what does it give me? 1. You got to put it in parentheses or it may give you a negative. What about 34.693 raised to the 0 power? Just 1. What about 1/4 raised to the 0 power? Just 1. Okay. So anytime you have an exponent that's 0, it turns the whole thing into just 1. All right. Okay. So our new rules are: if it's a negative exponent, move it up or down, opposite of where it is. And if it's raised to the 0, it's just 1. Okay. So let's look at a few examples here. All right. So on number 1. I've got 11m to the negative 5 power. So I want that negative 5 to become a positive 5. So where do I need to move it? Yeah, just down, right? But do I have to move the 11? No, the 11 has nothing wrong with it. So the 11 is going to stay where it is, but I'm going to move the m to the bottom to give it a positive power of 5. All right. Okay. On example 2, is there anything wrong with the negative 4? No, so I'm going to leave it alone. What about that x to the negative 3? How do I fix it? Right, I'm just going to move it down. So now x to the third is in the bottom. Is there anything wrong with the y? So I'm just going to leave it exactly where it is. All right. Okay, on number 3, we've got 1 over y to the negative 3. So the only problem is that negative 3 in the bottom. How do I fix it? Right, I'm just going to move that piece up to the top. So then I would have 1 y to the third, or if you don't want to put the 1, that's okay too. It would mean the same thing if you just put y to the third. All right? Okay, so once you got those, if you'll flip it over onto the back, now they're going to have us combine that with our previous rules. So remember, our previous rules are when we multiply, we add our exponents. When we divide, we subtract our exponents. And when we have power to a power, we multiply our exponents, okay? All right, so number 4. Here we are just multiplying, right? So we are going to multiply our numbers like normal. What is 4 times negative 2? Negative 8. Grayson, pay attention to those. All right, and then for my m's, when we multiply, we said we do what with our exponents? Add them. Okay, so my m has a 2 here. There's not anything written for that one, so what is it? A 1. Very good. So 2 plus 1 is going to give me m to the, good. All right, for the n's, still adding our exponent, what's negative 2 plus 4? 2. Good. So we didn't end up with any negative exponents, so we didn't have to move anything anywhere. All right? Okay, let's look at number 5. Again, we're just multiplying. So I multiply my numbers. 5 times 3 is good. All right, and then what do we do with those exponents? Add them. Okay, so for A, I've got negative 3 plus 2. What's negative 3 plus 2? Negative 1. Okay, so I have A to the negative 1. All right, now let's look at B. We've got negative 1 here, and what's this one? Just a 1. So what is negative 1 plus 1? 0. Very good. So I got b to the 0. Okay, so is there anything wrong with the 15? No, I'm going to leave the 15 where it is. What about that a with a negative exponent? How do I fix that? Move it down. So now I'm going to put an a in the bottom, or an a to the first. You can put the 1 if you want. And I have b to the 0. Well, anything to the 0 power is just 1. That whole thing is gone, and it just becomes a 1, right? So 15 times 1. Well, that's still just 15, right? So basically, anytime you have something go to the 0 power, it's just gone. Okay? All right. Let's look at number 6 here. Number 6, we've got a power to a power, right? So I actually raised 4 to the 3rd power, which means 4 times 4 times 4. And what is 4 times 4 times 4? Good. All right. And what do I do with my exponents on power to a power? Not add.
Times.
Multiply. Very good. So negative 4 times 3 is what? Negative 12. So I have a to the negative 12. And how am I going to fix this? Right, just move the a to the bottom. Do I move the 64? No. So I'll have 64 over a to the 12. Right? Okay, so number 7, we're dividing. When we divide, what do we do with exponents? Subtract. Okay, so when we get to the exponents, we're going to be subtracting. So we actually divide the numbers. What's negative 24 divided by 6? Very good. And now we're going to subtract exponents. So for a, we've got negative 3 and negative 5, right? Okay. So if this is going to confuse you, subtracting negatives, if that's going to mess with you, just put them where they would be positives, okay? So if I want a to the negative 5 to become positive, where would I move it? Up, right? And if I want a to the negative 3 to be positive, where would I move it?
Down.
Down. The a to the negative 3 is already in the top, so I move it down. Okay? All right, and then there's nothing wrong with our b's, so I'm going to leave those where they are. And I'll just leave the c where it is for now. Okay, so like you guys said, when we divided, we got negative 4. And now that my exponents are where we like them, we'll go ahead and subtract, just like y'all said. So what is 5 minus 3? 2. And where's the bigger one? On top. So A2 stays in the top. All right, for my b's, we subtract. And what do we get? 2. And where's the big one? Very good. All right, and then we have a lone c to the 0. But anything to the 0 power is just, so it's basically gone, right? Or this whole thing is now over 1, which means it's really just negative 4, a squared, b squared. All right? Okay. All right, so on number 8, we're multiplying, right, with these two parentheses, but I also have a power to a power on the second parenthesis. So exponents before multiplication. So I'm going to ignore this one for now and deal with this side over here. All right, so negative 3 squared. That means negative 3 times negative 3, right? And then negative 3 times the negative 3 is positive 9. Very good. All right, and what do I do with my exponents for power to a power? Multiply. Very good. So what's negative 2 times 2? Negative 4. Good. So I have x to the negative 4. All right, and then for y, I've got 3 times 2, which is good. And then z doesn't have an exponent, so what do we know it is? Right, it's 1. When we multiply, we get 2. Very good. All right, and we still have this being multiplied by that first part over there, right? Okay, now when we multiply, what do we do with exponents? Add them. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and add exponents. All right, so first of all, we had this 9. Is there any other big numbers? No, so I'm just going to bring down the 9. Okay, so for my x's, I've got 2 plus negative 4. What's 2 plus negative 4? Negative 2. So I have x to the negative 2. All right, for my y's, I have negative 2 plus 6. What's that? Good. And for z, we have 0 plus 2, which is 2. All right, so what's the only thing I need to fix now? Right, and I'm going to move it down, right? So I'm going to have 9y to the 4th z squared over x squared. Just move that x squared down. All right. Okay. Number 9, multiplying and power to a power. So we're going to take care of the power to a power first. So what is 2 squared going to be? 4. Good. All right. And then we said power to a power, we do what with those exponents? Multiply. So m didn't have one, so we know it's 1. 1 times 2 gives us 2. So I have m to the second. All right, for n, it's 1/2 times 2. What's 1/2 times 2? 1. Okay, so I have n to the first. All right, in that second parenthesis, we also have a power to a power. So what is 3 squared? 9. And for my exponents, negative 3 times 2, negative 6. Right? Okay, now we're just multiplying, right? So what's 4 times 9? Good. All right, and what do we do with our exponents when we multiply? Add. So what is 2 plus negative 6? Negative 4. And then we still have our n, right? Nothing to change it. So how do I fix this? M goes down. Very good. Move it to the bottom. But I'm going to keep the 36 and the n up there in the top, right? What? All right, last one. Hey, this one says evaluate this expression for r being negative 3 and s being 4. So anywhere there's an r, I'm supposed to replace it with negative 3. And anywhere there's an s, I'm going to replace it with 4. So I'm just going to rewrite what they gave me. So it was 2 to the negative 4, right? Times r squared. Well, what did they say r was? Negative 3. So I'm going to put negative 3 in parentheses, squared, times s to the negative 2. And what they say s was? 4. So I'm going to put 4 in parentheses to the negative 2. So are there any letters left here? No. So I can actually type this in my calculator exactly as we wrote it here, and it's going to give me the solution. So type it exactly like we did here, parentheses and all. And if we get a decimal, remember we can do math, enter, to turn it back into a fraction. And what do we get? Good. 9 over 256. Very good. Okay, so that covers all of our rules. So remember, when we multiply, we do what with exponents? Add them. When we divide, when we have power to a power, we multiply. And then our 2 new rules from today. If I have a negative exponent, how do I fix it? Move it up or down, right? Depending on where it is. And anything to the 0 power is always perfect.